Oh, a new season of Fargo is imminent, and we can't skip to the end without taking a look at the beginning. Tonight, we are discussing episodes 7 and 8 of the first season of Fargo. I forgot to mention that the Fantasmagorium is proud to present, what is it,
Money, Murder in Minnesota.
That's the one. With too much bubbling rage for me to discuss Lester in the intro, we'll focus on the best action sequence that is best action set piece that is illustrated primarily through sound. Key and Peele are introduced, and we get a time jump that occurs and has Gus dealing with the fallout of his misfire in the most pleasant of ways. Kat is here. I am Scotty R37, and Steve is mixing up a blood and sand. How are you doing, Kat?
Good.
First things first, blood and sand. What a terrible drink. Scotch and blood orange? Don't do that to Scotch.
Yeah, I think, okay, maybe it's a bit of foreshadowing.
Could be. This is, well, and that's, I might as well just bring up the last thing that happens on the second episode that we're reviewing tonight. But I was like, Scotch and blood orange. That does not sound like something that I would want to get tipsy on.
I have not had blood orange. What is it?
Blood orange, it's a very rich variety of orange. Like it's almost like it's a deep red, almost like a grapefruit. And so it's a type of juice. But again, the only way, some people, Scotch purists would say you're not even supposed to put ice in Scotch because you don't want to water it down. But to mix Scotch with orange juice, it's just somebody was cleaning out a fridge and decided that was the cocktail that they had because that's all they had. So anyway, there's my culinary or my confectionery review of how Lester doesn't even know how to drink. Stupid son of a. Anyway.
Yeah, he's that square.
He certainly found his confidence.
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess getting away with murder does that for you.
And framing your brother for it.
Yeah. Like to the point now that, oh my God, like I hate him.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing good about him. He has adopted all of the worst aspects of Malvo, but he is just slimier and less profitable at it.
I did love the part though when he goes back to the widow Hess, knowing that that she's not getting the money, and when they're having sex in the bedroom, he's just looking at the picture of Sam, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm getting you, motherfucker." Yeah. Like that was awesome.
Yeah. And still, but then, like, even that as sort of a power fantasy being flipped on its head, the guy who had bullied him throughout his entire life, and then he finally gets to, bang his wife. Mm. But this, like, the dialogue, the passionate exclamations of Gina, it's like, Lester, you're hurting me. It almost turns into like an assault. And I'm not saying I'm the biggest fan of the widow Hess, but I was still like, man, that he is so self-serving and so just center of the universe as far as he's concerned. Now that he's taken care of these things that he feels like he has to have taken care of.
Yeah, how he just throws out all of the remaining vestiges of his wife in the house.
Yeah,
even things he doesn't necessarily need to throw away, which he could use, like sewing machine. Now I gotta throw that out. Throws away all the little sayings that have been hanging on the walls, and even finally buys a new dryer and washer. And
yep.
Guy's telling him about the old one. He's like, oh yeah, and he keeps going on about it, but Lester's like not. He's just totally finally has the nerve to call somebody to clean up the mess, but when he says that it's blood, the guy just hangs up on him.
Yeah,
he's good.
I thought that was pretty funny too. And he's like, "Oh, you got a robbery, a lot of broken glass kicking around, eh?" He's like, "Nope, just a lot of blood." Click. So, no, that was good. And like this is. But how many people? So we start the episode. Let's deal with Molly getting shot.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we do get to see sort of the perspective of Molly through that interaction. She's the one who shot Wrench twice. And apparently, Gus's shot went straight through and just deprived her of a spleen.
She also came very close, face to face with Malvo in the
Yes.
snow, and he let her go. Surprisingly, he could have shot her, but he decided not to because she turned and shot the other guy.
Well, and it seems like just an opportunity for him to get away without more bloodshed. Although, see, he's always been sort of methodical in the way that Malvo has taken care of his targets and whatnot. And this one showed the full psychopathy of what he's willing to do to enact his sense of justice or retribution.
Well, and self-preservation.
Yes.
Because as we see in these 2 episodes, even with the time jump, Malvo completely abandoned the Stavros Milos plan because, as I speculate, he was driving on his way to go to the parking garage to get the money and to confront him when he got ambushed. And it's like, because of his worldview, dog eat dog. Oh, gee, like that money doesn't matter. I gotta find these guys. I gotta put them down. This has to stop. Which is why he's willing to go, drop the whole. I mean, he could have taken after getting rid of Wrench and Numbers, could have taken some time to go finish the Milos thing, but no, he just goes all the way back to Reno to meet his employer or his contractor, who's just this kind of hapless guy who attends like swimming yoga lessons with older ladies, and he's just making innocuous conversation in the back of the real estate place, like, well, you got a pin on every map here except for Georgia. Why not Georgia? Oh, my ex-wife, she's Korean, and it's like, and you still don't really know what that means or what all these tags are for. He's like, well, you want to kill me standing up or can I sit down? And he just automatically assumes that that's why Malvo's there.
Well, and he does say, like, I want to say, like, his handler, but Malvo's employer, contractor, handler, what have you, he does sort of expressly say that this is a relation or a business of relationships, which I thought was hilarious. So did Malvo, because I've seen enough hitman movies where it's usually, lone gunman. Look at the way I dress. I'm not here for the relationships. You should get a 9 to 5, to paraphrase Martin Blank. But it is interesting that he just knows as soon as he walks into the office, he sees Malvo. It's like, well, I am going to die. This is just a situation. And he does.
Yeah, 'cause I was wondering about that because he's like, okay, because you're not going to tell me what I want to hear. This one calls an ambulance if you tell me what I want to hear. This one calls a hearse. But did he kill him? Because he did tell him, because he's like, who do I have to see about this in Fargo? And as we find out, he must have told him who he has to see about it in Fargo, because he does go to see about it in Fargo, and we know he finds the right people. But then again, his boss didn't scream or anything, so we're not exactly sure what happened in the back room.
Well, the boss didn't scream, but a witness obviously found something that made her scream.
Right.
So I just assumed death.
Probably, yeah, something like that. And that's where we meet, Pepper and Budge just sitting out front, mocking the fact that these guys go to the Chinese restaurant like every day. He's like, don't they ever get sick of that? And you could tell, even I remember the first time I was watching this episode, I'm like, Key and Peele, what's this about? And I could tell the way the camera first started shifting around to the front of the car, and I saw him out of focus. I'm like, oh, I recognize that coat. Here he comes. Yeah. And I just loved how he's not even going to try and hide it. He just got this big freaking assault rifle and just goes inside. And I love how they don't actually show it. It's just panning along the windows, and I'm just laughing the whole time. I'm like, this is actually working. Like when he's like, what's the elevator code? 3-3, I think. Ding ding.
Yeah.
And that dipshit Australian guy gets thrown out the window. And no, it seems Moses Tripoli did make a mistake. He should have cared about what the situation was about rather than saying, head in the bag. That's the message. Like, yeah, except it's your head in the bag.
Yeah. Well, and that's that scene of, because oh my stars, Pepper and Budge, and they're doing some sort of surveillance on the crime family, the organized crime, and it was kind of jarring to see Key and Peele Like I can see them individually in other things, but when I see them together, it instantly takes me to their sketch comedy show. And it's interesting. It's interesting because I like them as performers. I like them as actors. And I like it when I see, comedians doing more dramatic work, even though they are bringing some of their charm and comedic flair. It is going to be something to see how, because next week it's just the last 2 episodes, and see how this all wraps up and ties together with those two and Molly.
Yes.
Like, I'm
right, because their punishment, I love how that's played out too. They're just sitting in the office waiting, and the guy just walks them down without saying a word, and they're trying to say, this is actually kind of a good thing that the syndicate has been wiped out, and the guy doesn't want to hear it. And he just puts them in the file room. It's like, this is where you work now, and shuts the door. And Budge just takes the picture of Malva, the one security picture from some camera there, and just posts it on the wall. And he's like, and that is where they go to live for the next year.
for the following year. And we do have Molly feeling like she's sort of pieced things together enough to bring it to Bill's attention. And but it's too late, because through the actions of Lester in the last episode, with planting the pictures, the panties, and the gun in the kid's backpack, kid goes to school with the gun, drops it. Police are sent over to Chaz's house, where they go and they open up the weapons locker, and they find all of the stuff, all the guns, the heavy assault rifle that he's not supposed to have, and the planted evidence from Lester. And like, I'm not saying that Chaz is a good person, but I don't think that he deserves this at all.
No, that's that's a stretch. I mean, it'd be a different story if this was like Sam Hess getting framed. I'd probably say, yeah, because he's for the crime syndicate and being the asshole that he is, but not Chaz. And you can see the reaction of Chaz and how just shell shocked that he is, and he can't even figure it out at first until he sees, because then you have that great scene where Bill is actually upset with Lester and wants to hear the story. And Bill is having a hard time keeping it together as Lester's feeding him more bullshit about how, oh yeah, Chaz and Pearl were having an affair. He threatened me. I was scared, and he killed Pearl. And I came home from work and saw that. And then we came upstairs, and there was Vern, and he shot Vern, and I got shot, and I just tried to cover up for him and all this. And Bill's like, Lester, you know me. Why didn't you tell me? And I'm like, Bill is being almost maliciously ignorant at this point, because as Molly tells him, we know that the guy who killed Hess was at the Lucky Penny. We know he was at the motel, and we know that Lester called the motel to ask for this guy. And we know that somebody, probably this guy, stole Lester's car on the same night, and it ended up being impounded up in Duluth where this other shit was going on. And he just doesn't want to hear it. And he's like, well, when the lottery sometimes comes and you miss it, you just miss it. It's like, that's an apples and oranges comparison, Bill. It's like he's actively not wanting to investigate the case at this point, to the point that he even brings in the Sudanese man and tells the story about how this guy was the sole survivor of a village massacre, that he came to live there and was shoplifting from Stavros' store for 3 months, with a nice, happy, good-hearted ending, which is clearly Bill trying to kind of needle Molly into saying, look, people aren't all evil and dark like you want to believe. There's a lot of really good-natured people out here, especially in this town. And that was kind of his nice way of quasi-apologizing for jumping on her, but also trying to say, look, I'm right about this. We need to just let it go.
Well, and I like, Bill has already expressed how he knew Lester in high school. They did the sort of contrast between Lester and Chaz, in that Chaz was the hothead who had broken a guy's nose, had to do community service. And so he was the more assertive of the two brothers. I think that it's sort of that, I don't know, victimization complex. Lester couldn't hurt a fly because Lester can't do anything. And to pin it on the brother almost makes more sense to Bill. And also, it Bill never actually has to say that he was wrong. He does say when he's like, "Oh, that drifter theory that I had, that was just off base." But aside from now that he's come to this and they have somebody, it is case closed because they have someone in custody, whether it's the right person or not.
Even with
He's
evidence,
yeah.
satisfied.
It's better to have a closed case than to continue investigating something that has pretty much wrapped itself up. And it is something. Bemidji is a quiet town. This stuff never happens there.
Which is why he
And
also, being maliciously ignorant, picked the dumbest person in the police department to continue the Hess case.
exactly. Yeah. And even then, like, what he's in his office, and it's like because Molly, after her hospital stay, and has mapped out the case in like classic It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with the strings and everything. And Gus is sending flowers. By the time she gets back home, yeah, as far as Bill's concerned, it's all taken care of.
Well,
It's
that's a
done.
funny thing too, because when Knudsen comes in to tell him that Molly's back and wants you in the staff room, he's like, "I thought we had at least one more day." And he's like, "Okay, time to find out what we're going to be doing today." Like he's acknowledging that Molly, in a sense, is better. Like he's almost quasi acknowledging that Molly's better at doing his job than he is, because we're going to take orders from Molly today and do whatever Molly wants us to do. And then he, like, for the first time in the season, really forcefully put his foot down and trying to shut her down on it. And then tries to kind of make up for it again by having a welcome back party at the. And we see also that Vern's widow seems to have accepted the story that Chaz did it, and Molly can't really bring herself to tell her that, I don't think it was Chaz. She doesn't want to open up a can of worms in front of the whole department and everything. So she's kind of just willing to. Okay, she kind of just lets it sit there, but we know she's not satisfied with it.
Yeah, and well, you can tell that Molly's not satisfied with it, which makes it so that Ida's not happy about it. But even then, when she had just had the baby, she said, "I don't want details, just take care of it."
Right.
And so that it's that personal responsibility that Molly's carrying around too, because she doesn't feel like it's been taken care of at all. It's the wrong man in prison, but we will this is sort of edge of my seat to find out how it all resolves. I'm looking forward to comeuppance being doled, but yeah, I am incredibly curious about that. The one thing that I noticed about Bill was that when Knudsen said that that Molly wanted to see him, he was like, "Well, I just had myself an omelet and I was waiting for it to digest." Again, another person in this town who is willing to just wait and hope that any of the problems that are occurring just go away.
Yeah, like they even have the photo practically identical of the shooter in Fargo, and that the newspaper says tied to organized crime, most likely. And yeah, Bill doesn't care, even though that would be a huge news story throughout the whole region. Yeah, I'm not going to investigate this. Doesn't matter that it's probably connected. Like you said, we'll just wait it out. No big deal. Let's not go interrogate the deaf assassin that we have, in custody. Let's not grill him about what's going on. Let's just, let it go.
Well, speaking of letting it go, so again, as we are dealing with Malvo, he's not necessarily as I don't know, surgical in his eliminations as one would think. Kills the cop who is guarding Wrench, and then goes in and explains to Wrench what happened. Numbers his dad. I slit his throat, and talks about as he is wont to do. Yeah, you're unemployed now. But he then mentions the grizzly bear that had been caught in the bear trap and had gnawed through its own leg to get out of the trap, and then died half an hour later face down in a pond, and then tosses him a key, which I don't understand.
Yeah, that one, I admit, kind of surprised me, because it's like, if you're going to drop everything and let go of your $1 million ransom that you got up at the parking garage to go all the way across the country to find out who came after you, to go commit a mass shooting and all this, and kill the cop just to get it because you're worried about being caught there, but you're going to give the key to let this guy go knowing he's a professional, and like, oh, if you it's almost like he has, like he says, you got closer than anybody else, and he almost feels like there's something honorable about that. Like the fact that the bear is willing to chew through its own footage to keep on going. And it's almost like he's taunting him, like he thinks it's like he's found a worthy opponent. It's like, you know what? I'll give you the key. But it's still odd, given the lengths he's gone to in this episode for self-preservation, that he's just gonna, oh, let's hope this works out. Here you go.
Yeah. So I am there, like, and because we are 8 episodes in now and we've only got the 2 left, I'm curious to see if anybody comes back. Like, I don't know, are we going to see Stavros again? Are we going to see Wrench again? Obviously, we're going to be running into Budge and Pepper, but just the previous individuals, I'm curious to see how it all plays out in the end.
Well, we also know that Molly's been in contact with the FBI about the shooting.
Yes.
She calls them for updates, and they're like, well, do you have anything new? No. Well, I'd say he's probably not going to call back then, because even if they haven't done their homework and trying to figure out, how wide this thing actually is.
Well, and also with the FBI sort of investigating organized crime, looking to figure out the murder of a police chief in the middle of nowhere, probably isn't on the priority list for any of the multiple dealings of their enterprise, their criminal enterprise. And even Molly is just sort of taken aback by that as well. It's like, well, a lot of people died. And
yeah, kind of brushing it. It's like, I got information on your potential suspect. I can tell you all sorts of things he's been up to over here in Minnesota, but no, they're not interested.
Yeah.
Because clearly the FBI is frustrated that whatever case they were trying to build against the syndicate can no longer go forward since they've all been murdered.
Well, and I'm wondering if it's going to be a happy ending, because it does make me sort of flash back to that story that was told to Gus about the man who was rich and wanted to give away his money so that he could change the world. And then ultimately he dies trying to just give everything. And Molly seems to be slowly but surely sort of giving away everything. And then we get to the time jump, and it's almost like it's water under the bridge.
I remember that was a shocking thing for viewers when because I was following along online and stuff each week while I was watching, that when they did the year-long time jump and people couldn't believe it, that it's like, what? And they just let this sit there for like a year and nobody followed up on anything. But I love that transition where, you have Gus has been giving her all these flowers enough that she could open her own florist shop. How he had to work up the courage to tell her that he's the one who shot her. And, her dad coming to watch her, and she's like, oh, we both got, gunshot wounds now. I thought it would have been funny if they'd have a scene where Gus would have to tell her dad as a former cop that he was the one who shot her. I was expecting that, but we didn't get that.
Yeah.
But I do love that transition when they're just making small talk, and he's inviting her like out on a date, and the camera just pans to 1 year later, and gets to be the mailman he wanted to be, which could either mean that the meeting for him to keep his badge didn't go well for him, or maybe he just voluntarily resigned at that point because he realized, this isn't for me.
Well, so I got the sense that the situation was that Gus was going to the hearing the following day, and they arranged to go to the date, which is like some sort of barn hop or something. I don't know. I know they were going to roast a pig. And you're right. That transition is really good, but I get the sense that he went to the hearing, was dismissed from the police force, and then got the job that he always wanted, got the girl, got Molly, and got Molly pregnant. So we have another, not chief of police, but we have another lady in uniform who's pregnant. So there's another nice little nod to the movie.
And then the other nod to the movie when she's sitting in bed with him and she's watching Detective O'Kara, which is a low-budget detective movie from 1944 about this aspiring lady detective whose boss gets murdered, and she figures, oh, I'm going to solve this, and it's going to make me a great detective. And her new boss, however, the interim boss, is incompetent like Bill and keeps getting in the way, saying you got to let things go sometimes. And she's sitting there watching this, and it's like, this is from 1944, and here we are in 2007 now, and there's still the same attitude is there, and she's thinking, oh geez, is this going to be like life now? Like like even when she's walking in town and sees that Lester is totally relieved and having this new like jazzing with his coworkers and everything, and we see that really funny scene when the widow Hess comes in with her sons to complain, saying, I was picking your pubes out of my hair, out of my teeth yesterday. I let you come inside of me. And it's like, oh God. And the sons are like, Mom, you shouldn't say stuff like that. And then they go, show them what we're going to do, boys. And they come to like actually physically threaten him in front of the other workers. And he just grabs it. And I love this, even though Lester's a dick. I love that he grabs the stapler and just hits these two dipshits. And she backs off. And she just kind of leaves, and then Linda, the coworker, is like all impressed by it, and clearly it seems the implication is that Lester married Linda.
Oh, they expressly say it.
Oh, they did say, okay, yeah. So
yeah, I would have been able to get through this last year with all of my personal happenings if it weren't for my loving wife, Linda.
And then when Chaz's wife, the sister-in-law comes to see him and has totally bought the story hook, line, and sinker. Like we saw that she even spit on Chaz when they found his stuff in the locker. And she's just, I've packed up all his hunting gear and you could have it. And nobody cheats on Miss whatever beauty pageant, Miss Huntsman or whatever it was. And I thought, oh God, what happened? How's this going to go, because they were talking about the trial and he might make bail, but now it's been a year and in the rest of that episode, we didn't hear what became of it. I assume nothing good because Lester, is off in Vegas getting his Salesman of the Year award. And just totally a completely new man.
Yes.
Till he sees Malvo.
Yes. Just briefly. Changed his appearance, doesn't have the bowl cut, has the gray hair now. Now it says, where does it? Yeah, in the Wikipedia for the recap of this, it says that Lester spots Malvo, who has changed his appearance and name. And I was like, they never say his name.
True, they don't. But he's certainly not going to give the name Lorne Malvo to his new friends.
No, but I was there. There's somebody I was excited to see was Stephen Root.
Yes, another Coen Brothers alum.
Yeah, I am looking. I'm hoping that he has lines in the next 2 episodes or 1 episode.
Yeah, and then I like the part where Lester and Linda are gonna go back to their room, and Linda's like, "Oh, I'm really tired, Lester. I want to turn in." And he sees the ladies walking by who are like eyeballing him. He's like, I'm not tired. I'm gonna go to the bar. I'm like, you piece of shit. Yeah. He's just gonna go there, and they're eyeballing him, and he brought his award with him to put on the bar so that they could see it because he's trying to show off. And I'm like, oh God, this fucker just needs to die.
Well, and and I hate him, and he does. But the funny thing is that it is like the performance by Martin Freeman is fantastic.
Oh, this is one of my favorite Martin Freeman performances ever. This is fantastic. Yeah.
And the character arc of him being timid, meeting Malvo, overcoming his timidity in the most violent and vile ways, and murdering his wife, and seeing the death of his high school bully, and how it has made him pretty much better in all aspects of his life in terms of how he's dealt with it and the confidence that he's gained from it. And like Linda's a very attractive woman, and so marrying her, his confidence at sleeping with the wife, the widow of his bully. Like while I
was gonna go deal with that, and he's like, you know what, maybe I'll deal with it, because he planned to go there and not tell her just so he could have that moment in the bedroom in Hess's bed. Like, Jesus.
Yeah. So I suppose it is one of the highest compliments of an actor to an actor is when they're portraying a character that you absolutely loathe, but you can't stop watching the performance of who I assume to be a perfectly normal, upstanding individual in Martin Freeman. But this guy is despicable, but he's still engaging as a character. And I'm not turning it off and saying I can't stand this guy because he sucks. It's like I can't stand this guy, but I want to see how it goes. And I hope he gets his comeuppance in some way or another. Let's hope for a wood chipper.
Yeah, it's just kind of, it's like it keeps pushing. And will he go to even deeper depths before we get there, because now that he's seen Malvo, and it's like, oh shit, and this is a good time to bring up the parable. So
Yes.
the 7th episode is called "Who Shaves the Barber," which is about. So there's a place where there's only one barber. He only shaves people who do not shave themselves, which means he can't shave himself because he only shaves those who don't shave themselves. So who shaves the barber? Well, that barber that can't exist. So that's like a paradox. And I was trying to think as to how that applies to the episode. And maybe it has something to do with Malvo, the way that he's just, unleashing his, very old school frontier primal justice on everyone, which begs the question, well, who deals with Malvo? or can anybody deal with Malvo? Because it's like this guy is like an entity.
Well, and as we sort of pointed out in the first couple of episodes, he is just like a force of
nature.
Yeah.
Like he said, born Malvo.
Yeah. And so I think that would apply. I think that's really astute in terms of, who is going to be the person who shaves Malvo, for lack of a better term. And then the 8th episode is called The Heap, which is the paradox of, which is illustrated by Keegan-Michael Key.
Yeah.
In the file room. At what point, if you take a file out of the file room, how many files do you have to take out of the file room until it is no longer a file room?
Yes, which also refers to like a heap of sand. How many grains of sand must you remove until it's no longer a heap or adding it? And how much of a difference would one grain of sand really make? And then it's like it's like you're splitting hairs, basically. Which is kind of what Bill was saying when he's trying to put down Molly, saying, "Oh, it's not a big deal. You're just playing. It doesn't really matter. We're all gonna, brush this under the rug and pretend it never happened. Just be happy about it." Just like Pepper and Budge got swept under the rug by being thrown into the file room for a year.
Well, exactly, and it's I find it interesting. And then he does go on to say, like, in a graveyard, if you take one dead body out of the graveyard, it's still a graveyard. But what if there are no dead bodies in a graveyard? What is it then? And then to apply it to not only sorry.
Budge responded to that, when you take all the bodies out of the graveyard and there's no graves in it, what is it? And he says it's a condo.
Yeah.
A condominium.
But that's the thing, is like, once you take out anybody who's looking for the perpetrators of a crime, and once you think you found the perpetrators of that crime, like, is there still a crime that's happened? What is Molly chasing now? They have someone, as far as they know, and she knows, or she has a sense that it's not the way it happened. It's not the truth. But with Molly just sitting there, and it is a heap. It doesn't. There is no crime at this point. The crime has been taken care of. Justice has been served.
Yeah, the crime of Vern and Pearl, and it's like, well, what about everybody else, Bill?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, it doesn't matter. But I did like that. It is interesting that, like you mentioned at the beginning, that despite that Gus lost, is the one who screwed up the most, he ends up benefiting the most from it. Yeah. But Gus is, so I don't know. Well, it's probably, again, speaking of likability, it's probably a lot to do with Colin Hanks, because I just find him to be another charming, engaging actor. Although I could definitely, there was a moment where I could see Tom Hanks when he's in bed and Molly wakes him up, and he does that, like, sort of wrenches himself awake, and he's like, "I'm up," because he's waiting for Molly to say, "Okay, it's time to have the baby." But I definitely saw some Tom Hanks in that performance. But aside from that, like, I enjoy that he never really wanted to be a cop, and he helped Molly with her investigation to a certain extent, even though it hasn't sort of completed based on the episode count. But he gets what he wants, and they're happy together. She's pregnant. Everybody, like,
I am glad that that occurred. And I was honestly, when I started watching episode 7, I was afraid that we were going to lose Molly. I don't know. I was thinking we were going to lose Molly, and I'm glad that she's still alive, and I'm glad that she's happily married.
I also found it interesting that the year-long time jump happens after Malvo kills the cop and gives Wrench the key. And they don't bring that up again either. And it's like, well, now a cop's been killed, so that should up the ante a bit. But no. And it's like, wonder if Wrench got away or not. And it's like, again, things that people are just kind of, we'll forget about it and deal with it later. or like the cops are like, who did that? It's like, we don't really know, and nobody really cares. And Molly is the only one who does, as epitomized by the fact that she insists right when she gets out of the hospital to going straight to the police station. And when the front desk person tells her that, oh, we got it, it was Chaz's, it was Chaz all along. And she leaves and is just so dejected to the point that her dad even gets out of the car and asks her what's wrong. And she feels like everything is just wrong. Like, no, none of this makes any sense. Like even when she walks down the street and sees Lester, it's like, what the hell? Like she even leaves her own welcome home party or welcome back party to go down and see what's going on there. And it's like, she's still, it's like, it's not over.
Well, and she does, like, and again, her performance is great because she comes out, and after finding out that Chaz is in jail, she's basically hyperventilating with the weight of the situation. And as we've said, it's just like waiting for problems to go away or just trying to put the unpleasantness behind you, whether or not it's accurate, doesn't matter. Let's just forget this whole sordid affair. And this is why, like that, when Vern was saying you're going to be the chief of police because you have a more keen investigative mind than Bill, and you don't want to be the chief of police for the sake of, so you have an office and you get to digest your omelets and all that jazz. You actually want to do the job properly. And I find that and with Bill being the chief of police, it is just a constant reminder when you were sitting there the day of his death, and it's like, oh yeah, you're going to be the chief of police. Bill couldn't do it. And Bill cleans his gun with bubble bath. And it's like, how would that, that the guy who died, who was better than both of you, thought that you were better than him, and he's the one who gets it for obvious, political, like probably sexism for the fact that he's a man, probably like maybe, oh no, he's senior. She did say that he was senior, but that's got to sort of turn the knife because you're trying to prove who killed your friend and boss, and you're being flummoxed by somebody who your boss and friend didn't even respect, really.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, again, going back to when Knudsen got punched in the face by Lester. And apparently the excuse that Lester's been telling people that other people believe is that, oh, I just had a few too many to drink and blah, blah. It's like, I'm sorry, did Knudsen forget that he was asking for a taxi service and was acting really desperate? Like he doesn't even find anything suspicious about that and why he punched him and clearly wasn't drunk or anything. He's just, oh, okay, whatever. Nobody, it's like almost getting to the point of malicious, willful ignorance at this point to investigate what's going on. Bill wasn't entirely wrong about the drifter aspect of it, because it's true that Malvo was just drifting through Bemidji. He didn't have any business there. And even though he encouraged Molly's investigation into this mysterious drifter, he doesn't care that part of the case wasn't solved. He just, it's like, what? It's so bizarre. And it is a Coen Brothers universe, and their movies tend to be darker. And remember, these scripts did get their stamp of approval, which is why they were willing to let their names be put on it as executive producers, even though they had nothing to do with the series. This was all Noah Hawley, and they just gave their blessing to, you could do it. And that gives you a sense when you think about what happens to characters in Coen Brothers movies based on their morals or whatever. You can get a sense kind of where it's going, but it's like, it's still dark. And like you said, it's not necessarily geared for happiness, because we've seen that this is not the story gets darker and darker the further we go. But we did see a chink in Lester's armor at the very end there when he saw Malvo again, and he just kind of shriveled up like he was when he first met. Because in the hospital, it's not that he told him yeah, kill Hess. He didn't even want to say no because he didn't want to entertain the possibility that he could be serious about it. And ever since Hess died, he's just been boosting his confidence. And now, for the first time since then, he's kind of,
True.
shriveling up and talk about the fates that they should both, you know, be in the same casino restaurant in Vegas at the same time.
Yes. Well, and that kind of, and yeah, that kind of happenstance and coincidence is also one of the things that are sort of staples or constants within Coen Brothers movies, is that life is weird. It's not always pleasant, but it's weird, and stuff happens that is inexplicable. But hey, who am I to complain? It's based on a true story. Um, but yeah, I all in all, this is really great. I'm somewhat reluctant. I'm getting a little nostalgic for something. I hate it when people miss they miss something when it's happening currently. So when I go and hang out with people and they're like, "So when am I going to see you next?" And it's like, "I'm here now. Why are you worried about the next time? I'm here now." But watching this and it almost being over, it's gonna be a little bit of trouble for me to be able to wish Molly adieu.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a really popular, like a breakout role for her. And I thought her career really would have taken off. She's had other roles and stuff since then, but nothing as big as this. Another thing we forgot to mention that was really evil that Lester did is we find out from the sister-in-law that Gordo had been sent up to either juvie or some type of mental hospital because the gun was unloaded, and the reason Lester put it in there is because he knew that would be the quickest way to get it for the cops to get a search warrant of the house, specifically the gun cabinet. But it's like, well, Gordo's been sent to this place. She called it like Redlands or Red something.
Yes.
It's like, even your nephew, yeah, he's a little off, but it's like you're even gonna send him up the river. It's like, oh god, it's like it's I love how the series does that, like starting with a character who you kind of want to root for a lot, and then it just turns it so hard around, and in a believable way too, that isn't cheesy or half-assed. And that's what I really like about the way the series has been written so far.
Yes. And like with 10 episodes, I like the gradual progression of the character, and I like how the arc has been presented. If it were done in a movie, I think that it would feel too quick, or you'd have to start like halfway through the story just to be able to see the process in which Lester turns. Like, you're rooting for the underdog in the first episode, and you don't, and now the underdog is winning, and it's the worst thing ever. And whatever happens around him is like, people's lives are being destroyed because of his success. It's not him pulling himself out of the negative situation that he was in or how he was perceived. It's him almost taking vengeance on the world. And
it's like Revenge of the Nerds taken to a really dark place.
absolutely, yeah.
Because some of that doesn't hold up today either. But it's really dark.
That's true.
Yeah, really dark. Because again, like I said, if he was doing this to people who made his life a living hell forever, I would be kind of more in Lester's corner about it, which is why I was kind of in his corner in the beginning. But then it's like, okay, this is too much. I can't anymore. And then it's just like, to make you just actively hate it. I'm like, God, that's such a great performance by an actor to do that, to make that seem believable. Like, even when he goes to the widow, oh, I'll go to her place, knowing, and you could tell he's kind of delighted by the fact that she's not going to get the money. That just makes him even happier, because he's literally screwing over his childhood bully by, I'm in your house, I got your wife, and I'm screwing her in your bed, and I'm also screwing her over with not going to give her the money, even though she didn't really have anything to do with Sam being a jerk to Lester. But it's just, oh god,
yeah.
It's
an insane, and the fact that I was okay. So he goes over to the widow Hess, and then the seduction takes place under the pretense that he may be able to inflate the payment, which he knows is canceled. And then they show the conversation between his sister-in-law, I guess.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, you're not gonna bang your brother's wife now, are you? Like, I thought Lester was gonna go on a tear. I'm
Yeah,
glad it didn't happen.
that would have been a bit. And then I
Well, then
thought another thing which was odd is that, or not odd, but just evil is that, when Lester's wife first died and Chaz thought Lester was the victim, he invited him immediately to come live with him for quite a while. Oh, we're going to take care of you, even though he still thought very low of Lester. But Lester doesn't seem to have returned the favor to Chaz's wife now that, Chaz is in prison and her son is, either in an institution or wherever he is. She's like, oh, I've boxed up all this stuff to give to you. And she's totally over, oh, how dare he cheat on me, blah, blah, blah. But Lester's not really offering anything in return, even though she let him stay in her home for quite a while and waited on him, hand and foot, made him dinner, all that kind of stuff. So it's like this level of selfishness that's,
well,
it's like no depths of depravity at this point.
Yeah.
Moral taboos that you won't violate.
Well, and also she's talking about what Chaz did, and that's more in regards to what happened with Gordo and the gun and cheating on her and having the affair, alleged affair, false affair. And even then, Lester's like, oh, like killing my wife, which never happened, but she doesn't know that. And they're both being incredibly selfish about the situation. One in like psychotically so, or sociologically, you know what I mean? You know the thing. And it's so interesting to see those two people interact, and then this sort of questioning, that look that Martin Freeman gives when he doesn't quite get it, and you think that things are going to happen, and she gives him a kiss on the cheek, and it's like, oh man. And there was even sort of like a little bit of his shoulders square and he stands up a little straighter, and it's like, yeah, I've got my mojo back now, kind of thing in that interaction. And it's just like, oh, I don't like you at all. I want to see him brought down back to where he was when I met him, so that he can be humiliated and punished.
I mean, I get why he feels that way, because it's like, okay, so his nagging wife who was constantly insulting him, masculine, okay, you got rid of her, you got rid of his childhood bully who he never made mental amends with, like being able to deal with that, and his brother who always thought lowly of him and needling him on that front, he got rid of his brother. So it's almost like he feels that the three people are kind of like they're gone, and so he's like, oh, I could be whatever I want to be now. And it's like, well, Lester, you didn't really have to kill all these people or screw them over to do that. You could have just, told your wife, you know what, I want a divorce. Because after all, he became a good salesman of the year by his own drive. He didn't pull any con to do that. He got his own confidence back and started being better at what he was doing. It's like, well, you could have just kicked your wife out, or not kicked her out, but like you could have divorced her, or not formally divorced, so that way he doesn't have to lose too much of the finances. Or you could have humiliated your bully in another way, rather than, like, you didn't have to do all. And your brother, you could have humiliated or gotten back at him by way of just being super successful, defy your brother's expectations, say, hi, you think I'm a little runt, you little bastard, but no, he just decided to do all these evil things because he's been infected by like the viral disease known as Lorne Malvo.
That is known as Lorne Malvo. Oh, in better circumstances, it might have been an interesting underdog success story, but fortunately, I can't wait to see this fucker pay.
Yes, and again, it's also been a year, and we didn't get to check in on Stavros at all to see what he's doing with his life. I would wonder if he would have gone back to, because he mentioned about his ex-wife. He's like, oh, she's kind of a nagging bitch, but she has a human heart. She wouldn't do any of these evil things. So, and we found out why the fish ended up on the roadway.
Explain.
Remember when the fish ended up falling from the sky? And
yes.
Well, they explained that in the 7th episode when Chaz and his wife and Gordo are in the kitchen, and the TV is on, and they're talking about how during the storm, the water spouts created like a mini tornado, picked up the fish out of the lake and strewn them all over the road. And she's like, isn't that the darndest thing? And so that is how that happened.
I didn't pick up on that. I should have. That's awesome. I'm glad that they do address it. And you did say that they address it in sort of an they allude to it. It doesn't become overt,
Yeah,
but
even when I saw the show the first time on TV, I kind of missed it. I was like, I don't know, I was like spacing or something because it happens very early in the episode, and I just at the last second I noticed that the fish are on the TV and they're talking. I'm like, what? Oh, they meant, I missed it, and it wasn't until I got the DVD that I found out. But I thought that was another weird thing that happened. Oh, and I should say that previous episode, the where Malvo executed his master plan, that won an Emmy for outstanding directing for a episode of television, actually.
oh, nice.
But yeah, that was the way they just kind of offhandedly mentioned, oh yeah, this is how the fish flew out of, even though it looks so cold. It's like, wouldn't the lakes be frozen at this point, or maybe not? But apparently not. That's how that happened, and it's like something that Malvo didn't even plan that ends up playing into his whole Exodus thing, or his or not his Exodus, but his plagues of Egypt type plan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was happenstance, but serendipitous, a happy accident.
Yeah.
I do want to say hello to the Phantom Organist.
Oh,
Thank
hello.
you for appreciating my mixology review. Don't do it. Don't mix anything with scotch. And Lemon says hello to us.
Lemon pie.
So yeah, I am looking forward to wrapping this up, and then in 2 weeks, we're gonna have a Ain't No Party Like a John Hamm Party.
Yeah, and we'll probably do that one on a Friday because I do have company here for Thanksgiving, which is on that Thursday.
Makes sense.
They're leaving on Friday, so it'll probably be a Friday show. But that's all about that. Yeah, so yeah, next week will be the big finale, the Fox, the Rabbit, and the Cabbage, and Morton's Fork. We'll see how that plays out.
I'm looking forward to it. I cannot wait. Thank you again. And I'll see you next week. You're supposed to say you betcha.
Yeah, you betcha.